All right, everybody, let's squeeze in here.
Yeah.
We've got kind of small field of view. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. My name is Casey Harriet. I am the R3 coordinator for National Wild Turkey Federation and the Department of Wildlife. R3 stands for Recruitment, Retention, and Reactivation. So essentially, I help to create programs and initiatives that get people out in the outdoors hunting. And today we're going to be talking about upland game hunting, upland bird hunting, and we have our upland game bird biologist, Tel Judkins here, who is going to be our expert. He's going to be the one talking or presenting over these birds and how to hunt them and whatnot. And then after that, we will have Jacob Harriet, the Lincoln County Game Warden, on here to talk about regulations and how to stay legal in the field. And then after that, we're going to open it to a Q&A at the end. So if you think of any questions as we go along, please type them in the chat box here, and I will field them for our experts at the end. We should have plenty of time, and I do want to preface that this will be recorded for all future viewing on our YouTube channel under a Learn to Hunt playlist. So you can go back and view this if you need to repeat something at any point in time. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Tel and share my screen, and we're going to get started.
Awesome. So I'll while she's doing that, I'll also throw out, we try to put this on our actual quail resource page for the department. So it should be pretty easy to find right off of our website under the hunting resources tab. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in the presentation coming up.
Okay, as soon as I get stall. Just kidding.
No.
Okay.
So I'm pretty excited to see how many people we had signed up for this. Last year, I think we had like 6 or 7 people join us. Today we've had, I think, 130 people sign up to join us here for this Learn to Hunt. So that's pretty awesome to be able to see that many folks coming around. So we'll squeeze in here and see what we can do.
Can I get a confirmation that you guys can see that? If someone just say, yep, for me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good deal. So, like Casey said, I'm Tel Judkins. I'm the upland game biologist for the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. Today, we're going to talk about learn to hunt quail and pheasant. Our upland game seasons are going to be kicking off here. Actually, this Saturday will be the opener for our quail season. So, definitely time to get out there and enjoy the outdoors. So, without further ado, let's dive into this and see what all we can find out about quail and pheasant. We're going to go through kind of 5 topics today. The what birds are in Oklahoma, the species of quail that are out there, general look at kind of the weather and how that impacts our birds, our season outlook, the regulations. I'll kind of briefly touch on those, and then Jacob will be able to follow up and clarify or answer any questions that we have coming up. And then just the general hunting basics on what the bare necessities are to be able to get out there and find some of these birds. So, how many species of quail are there in North America? We actually have 7 species across the entire nation. We have 6 huntable species, the northern bobwhite, the scaled quail, Montezuma's quail, or Mearns quail, California quail, mountain quail, Gambel's quail, and then there's also the endangered masked bobwhite. So which ones of those can we hunt here in Oklahoma? It's pretty easy when we only had a few people last year to have the audience participate, but we'll just jump to it this year. We actually have 2 species of quail that are found in Oklahoma. So the northern bobwhite is one that can be found pretty much statewide. And then we also have a scaled quail. It can be found typically up in our panhandle and in far western edges of the state. So whenever we're talking about quail hunting, most often we're referring to hunting those northern bobwhite, but we do have those scaled quail available as well. So we also have pheasant. Pheasant were originally introduced into the United States back in the 1800s and were started to be introduced in Oklahoma a little over 100 years ago, about 1920, where we had a huntable population established by about 1948, 1950, across a few counties in our far north and northwestern regions of the state. Today, we have a huntable population of pheasant. We'll get into some of the range and specifics of where you can find them, but these critters are out there for you to go after as well. So that covers, generally speaking, what birds we're talking about when we're referring to upland game. One of the big drivers that we see every year in our quail and pheasant populations is, and you'll hear it often from us, is habitat and weather. So how does that weather actually impact the birds? We'll take a brief look here and see what all we can see. If we go back to November of last year about this time, we had about 50% of the state in some level of drought. Drought definitely has impacts on birds in a lot of different ways, from impacting the plants that produce flowers that attract in the insects that they eat the plants that produce seeds, as well as just scenting conditions for bird dogs to be able to find them come season. So anytime we have drought around, it definitely can make things a little bit harder on the birds. We fast forwarded to early in the spring of this year, we actually saw a lot of improvement on that drought. But by August, we actually were back up to about 86% of the state in some level of drought. Not too severe at that time in August, but it's gotten a little worse since then. If we go to October, the end of October, we actually had 92% of the state in some level of drought. So thought we were going to talk about how to hunt birds. What are we doing talking about the weather? The point with this is that weather conditions can make it, one, tough for birds to be able to produce nests and be good at producing offspring, but it can also affect how many of those birds are recruited into the fall and how many we actually see around come season. As well as, like I said a little bit ago, on the ability for those bird dogs to be able to scent out birds. We will see a little bit of improvement on this. We've obviously seen quite a lot of rain in the last week. I think at my house I had like 6 inches of rain.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely see a little bit of improvement. But these maps don't come out until Thursday, so I won't have a new one until tomorrow. So we'll have to rock and roll off of this one. That briefly touches on weather. Generally, we can see some pretty strong correlations between like our El Nino La Nina trend. So in years where we have that springtime El Nino, like we did this year, we actually usually see an increase in our bird populations. When we transition to that La Nina pattern, which typically is a little bit drier, a little bit more mild temperatures, we can see a little bit less of a good situation for our quail populations across the state. So we've covered a little bit on the weather. Like we said a little bit ago, if you have any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat and we'll kind of try to address them as we're going through. But let's switch gears and look at our outlook and see how things are looking this year. So every year we put out two reports as the ODWC. We have the August roadside survey report. That showed actually we were looking really good. We were up above the long-term averages, the 10-year averages for every region except the far southeast. That showed that we had really good breeding conditions all throughout the spring and early summer. Whenever we release the second report from our October roadside surveys, that gives us a better idea of what that actual recruitment was going into the season. A couple of things that we saw was, one, our overall statewide average is up about 48% over last year. So that's actually 4 years of consecutive growth in our quail populations, which if you're a bird hunter or a soon-to-be bird hunter, that's a really good thing to see, especially with kind of boom bust as that chart represents there on how our quail populations have done historically. One of the other things that we saw is the age structure of the birds we saw in October. It was where we didn't have a lot of the young birds seen in October, which means that our breeding didn't do too great the more and more drought that set in. But we definitely were seeing a lot of improvement. And again, seeing that 48% bump in our quail population statewide. We can also look at some of this data by region. And so we can see that the Northwest region was actually the best data, the best numbers that we saw for our quail per route from these surveys. So that can help us really focus in some of those efforts when we're thinking about where to hunt. Data like these can tell us that, the Northwest region might be where we want to focus on trying to go chase birds this weekend. We can actually see from the data that our bird populations were up over that 10-year average, which is a really welcome sight to see. In our pheasant world, we do a couple of surveys for them also. We do a spring crow call survey. We can see that we were up a little bit this year on our crows per point, which is a really good thing to see. We break this data down from the traditional counties and the non-traditional counties. What that means essentially is the traditional counties are where those pheasant were first stocked and first really heavily introduced in the early 1900s. And that's where we see some of the stronger populations across the state. But we also do a brood survey for them in August, and we can see again that we had a little bump in our pheasant populations again. I would say that from our roadside surveys, if there's an area where you generally see quail, it's probably going to be better in that area than it has been in the last 5 years this year. You should have some really good opportunity to get out there and hopefully find a few birds starting this weekend. One thing that I like to point out when we're talking about the bird numbers is that we have seen some changes over the years, and that's where programs like this and the R3 efforts really can come in handy, and working to bolster up those hunter numbers. Both of these charts come from our game harvest survey data, which is where we call up hunters after the hunt and see how they did, how many days they hunted. A lot of really good information comes from that. But you can see that just in the last 20, 25 years, those green lines represent the number of hunters. So we've seen a pretty good decrease in the number of upland hunters here in the state. Our bird numbers definitely fluctuate, and they tend to correlate pretty tightly with how many hunters we have versus how many birds we have. But one interesting thing that we see is if we look at how many days a hunter spends in the field on average, to some, these are rookie numbers, but to others, in 1986, hunters averaged about 7 days in the field. And in 2023, hunters averaged about 5. So there's not a huge disparity in how many days hunters are getting out there and enjoying the uplands. Same can be said on harvest. In 1986, we were harvesting about 3.5 birds per hunter. In 2023, we were right at 3 birds per hunter. So while there is a slight downward trend there, we are seeing that there's not a whole lot of difference between what style of hunting and the success rates from the 80s all the way up into today. So that covers a little bit of the outlook on how to use some of those tools to figure out where the best place might be to hunt. We can go over some regulations here and kind of how to make sure you stay legal before you hit the uplands. This is literally taken from the Oklahoma Hunting and Fishing Regulation Guidebook. So page 43 is where you'll find all of the information for quail and pheasant. We'll go over that quail side first. Generally for license requirements, hunters that are 18 or older are required to have a hunting license. If you're under 17, you actually don't need a license in the state of Oklahoma. You're exempt from that hunting license for quail and pheasant at least. For non-residents, you also need that annual hunting license. Our season dates for quail are, again, starting up this Saturday. It's always the second Saturday in August or in November, pardon that. But it's the second Saturday in November has been our start date for years and years, and it runs through February 15th. So easy to kind of keep track of when quail season starts. Our daily limit is 10 birds. So you can go out and in a given day harvest 10 birds, but there's a 20 bird possession limit after that first day. So if you went out and hunted, say, 3 days, you couldn't possess 30 birds by the end of that. You would have had to have gone back to camp and eaten 10 of those birds. You can only have 10 in possession at a given time. Moving through these, that legal means of take. Those are what weapons or what tools can we use to be able to harvest quail? Quail actually have some interesting caveats on the legal means of take. So you can use shotgun, which is your classic over and under, your 12 gauge, your 20 gauge. It could also be a muzzle loading shotgun. So they actually have those that you are muzzle loading shotguns. You can use a longbow. That's the only archery equipment that is legal to hunt quail in the state of Oklahoma. So you can't use a compound or a crossbow or anything like that. It has to be a traditional longbow. And you can also use legal raptors. So if you have a falconry permit and have all the licensing to be legal in that realm, you can actually use your falconry birds to go out and harvest quail. This next one confuses a lot of people when we talk about pot shooting. Well, what the heck is that? So I threw in this photo here. Imagine you're walking through the uplands and you find this nice covey of birds first thing in the morning. They haven't really left their roost. If you were to fire upon that covey, that would be what's considered pot shooting. So at no time can we take a shot at quail while they're resting on the ground, or that common pot shooting. It's very tempting because right there you've almost got a full limit. So that's something to definitely look out for. Next up would be public lands. And this is definitely one to take a look at before you go out to a wildlife management area. I've selected a couple of random ones here on how some of those species or those season dates can be different from WMA to WMA. So Cimarron Hills up in northwestern Oklahoma, we can go through that data and see quail there is closed for the first 9 days of deer gun season. Their hunting hours are a little bit different. They close at 4:30 daily. And then that WMA is actually closed to non-residents from February 1st through 15th. So all of that information is in the regulations booklet as far as knowing all of the rules on season dates and any of that on that WMA. Lexington in central Oklahoma, it actually shows there at the top that it's closed for controlled hunts the 16th and 17th, 20th and 21st. So be mindful of those. If you were trying to go quail hunting there, you wouldn't be able to on those 2 weekends. Down at the bottom, it also shows all of those different seasons and critters, including quail, that it's closed from the opening day of deer archery through the first 9 days of deer gun. So you wouldn't actually be able to open up your quail season on a WMA like Lexington. So definitely be mindful of those differences that will be across WMAs across the state. Shooting hours is actually a pretty easy one to find now that we've got a nice fancy app. So the Go Outdoors OK app, the icon there is that little image to the left. And you can see easily that sunrise, sunset button. If you were to click that, it'll actually let you set your location as well as what date you wanted to see when the sunrise will be. A lot of times when we're out in the field, you just open it up. It uses your location. It uses the date that it currently is, and it'll tell you when the sunrise is for that day. I've gone ahead and looked at what sunrise will be for this Saturday. And so quail season will officially kick off at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning. And it goes to that official sunset of 5:25
In Stillwater.
in Stillwater, at least. So if you were out west, that time would be a little bit different. Hunter Orange is the next bit that's on here. Generally speaking, if you are being a safe upland hunter, you're going to be covered on the Hunter Orange requirements. The official rules are that if you're in any time that there's an open gun season, quail hunters or pheasant hunters, upland hunters in general, have to wear either the orange hat or orange vest. This is a photo of kind of my general quail hunting attire. My dogs even wear a little bit of orange. I like to know where they're at all times, but you can see I easily cover that hunter orange requirement with my hat, my strap vest, my hoodie, several different layers in there that would help us be 100% on that hunter orange requirement. Looked like there was a couple of messages that were in the chat. I was going to check real quick. Why aren't recurve bows legal? That is a good question. What I can tell you is that the rule is longbow. And we do have several folks that I've seen go out and be successful with the longbow. Those regulations were put in place many, many years ago on what the legal means of take would be for quail. We haven't had much interest in changing that I've seen at least. So if that's something that you are interested in seeing changed, my email will be at the end of this. Feel free to reach out, and the worst we can do is look at seeing if that's something worth digging into and readdressing.
It's like almost the same snapshot kind of.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same bow.
Maybe Jacob has some insight on that.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, you can start looking to see what that difference was. Back on it here. So that covers the regulations from the quail side. We'll touch briefly on that pheasant side. We've got a little bit longer until our pheasant season kicks off, but the hunting license requirements are the same for our pheasant. The season dates are December 1st is when our pheasant season kicks off, and it runs through January 31st. So it starts a little later, ends a little earlier. That list of counties you can see highlighted here in the map at the top. And there's also the kind of northern sections of Dewey, Blaine, Kingfisher, and Logan that are north of Highway 51. So that yellow of Ellis County down at the bottom would kind of extend out to the Payne County line. That is where we can go and legally hunt for quail. Osage County is also on there now. We were able to get that added in a couple years ago. The daily limit for pheasant is going to be 2 males or 2 roosters or 2 cocks. They've got several different names that they go by. They also have that possession limit that we talked about on quail. So you can have 2 limits after the first day in your possession. So you can only have at most 4 roosters in your possession at a time. And if you're hunting, say, like the Oklahoma-Kansas border, and the limits are different. You can't exceed the largest number of birds that can legally be taken in one of those states. So, like, you can't go get an Oklahoma limit and a Kansas limit. You're just at whatever the highest is of those two. Another difference in our pheasant is the proof of sex. It's the wrong direction. I had those pictures on there, but I guess they didn't make it. The with pheasant, we have to leave either the head or the foot on the bird. That's to be able to show that it is in fact a male, because the males are the only ones that we can harvest. So if we leave the head's brightly colored compared to the female. It's got a nice red eye patch, that green head. Pretty obvious that that's a male versus a female. And then if we just left the foot, they actually have a little spur, kind of like a turkey. And so we need to have one of those attached to the body until it's reached its final destination. So that final destination could be your campsite where you're going to go back and cook and clean those birds, or it could be all the way back to the home. So once it gets back to the house, it's at its final destination before you can finish cleaning out those birds. Legal means of take for pheasant are a little bit more open. We have the conventional and muzzleloading shotguns that are available. Any legal archery equipment as defined by the state, it falls within legal means on pheasant. Those legal raptors, we can also use hand-propelled missiles, which would be something like an atlatl, slingshots, and then other anything else that was listed on the general hunting regulations for legal means of take. Same kind of deal on the public lands. Be sure that you know before you go. Check out the regulations booklet for any of those specific WMA issues. Shooting hours are the same for sunrise to official sunset. And then the hunter orange requirements are the same for our pheasant as well as they are the quail. We are chucking right along through here. We're going to have a lot of good time for questions. Now to dig into actually why we're here. So we needed to go through what birds we can hunt, how the weather impacts them, what areas of the state are looking best according to the data, the regulations so that we're legal when we go to the field, but how do we actually go and hunt these quail? This is a photo that I took from one of our roadside surveys, and it just kind of always gets me energized for quail season. In this photo, we've got a covey of quail that have come in. We've got a small brood of pheasant. There's a little cottontail in the background. There's even a dove, all in one shot here. And so this is the dream world as far as trying to find a good spot to go pheasant quail hunting. So most folks that are going out quail hunting or other upland game, they're going after with a bird dog. These are my two bird dogs. They're both German short-haired pointers. They're kind of one of the classic types of bird dogs that are out there. You could line up 100 bird hunters and ask them what the best bird dog was, and you would get 100 different answers. I will tell you that the best bird dog is the one that helps you find birds. As long as they're helping you find some birds, they're definitely doing their job. But generally speaking, you're going to go out with the dogs and you're going to focus in on finding some shrub habitat. Hopefully at some point your dog goes on point. Carson here is holding out one paw up. His tail's a little down for what I'd like to see, but he's saying, hey, there's something that I can smell right in this bush. You should come check it out. The hunter approaches this situation while the dog kind of sits there and freezes. We're able to get a covey rise where the birds come up. Whenever this happens, it's really important to focus in on one bird. One of the biggest mistakes that we make as bird hunters is we kind of focus in on all of the birds and we end up missing. I end up missing a whole lot. That's one of my worst points about hunting is I'm a terrible wing shoot. But if you focus in on one of those birds and you would lead it the same as you would a clay target or a clay pigeon, by the time that you squeeze that trigger, hopefully you're able to connect. The bird dog's able to bring you the bird, and you're able to enjoy the fact that you harvested a wild quail here out of Oklahoma. Now, that was way too simple and way too boiled down. So what all do we need to go hunting? Generally, I recommend some sturdy boots. Our uplands can be everything from rolling sand hills to rocky outcrops to now that we've gotten 6 inches of rain in a week, pretty muddy. So the variables can be out there, and those sturdy boots will really help you get around and back to the truck. I've been on some of these outings where I end up walking, 10 miles before I finally get back to the truck. So having some comfy boots will get you a long ways. Brush pants are definitely something that's helpful. A lot of the hunting that we're doing is based around shrubs And so some of those shrubs have little pokey sticks on them, and they're not the funnest thing to walk through. So having some pants that are either like the ripstop fabric that they have nowadays, or they've actually got some with protective layers. I've even got some like snake shaps that I'll throw on just to help get through the sand plums. But definitely something that will help you out. As far as the what tools to use to harvest, most often it's going to be a shotgun. Generally, that's going to be a 12 gauge or 20 gauge. Those are the two most common ones that we see as far as what calibers. It's you can also find a lot of folks that are eager to get out with a 16 gauge or a 28 gauge. I even got out that photo in the top right was my bird that I harvested on opening day last year with my single shot 410. That was kind of my goal for the whole season was to get out and harvest one with my single shot 410, and I did it opening day. The next thing you can see in this photo, I'm kind of wearing a backpack. Since I'm running with the dogs, I want to make sure I've got plenty of room to have all of their supplies as well as mine and a place to hold my water and the harvest and everything else. There's a lot of different options out there, but something that's comfortable for you is what's going to be the best thing out there. The next thing I would add in is dressing in layers. We say this a lot when we're talking about, outdoor survival and that type of talk, but a lot of times our quail hunts could be 20 degrees in the morning and 60 degrees in the afternoon. So being able to dress in layers, having a couple extra, a hoodie or something you can take off to be more comfortable will go a really long way in making that hunt more enjoyable. Some things to think about for the dog as well as yourself is a collar, a leash, a first aid kit. The dogs will get scratched up just like we will. So being able to take care of our animals and our companions while we're out there in the field is paramount. Plenty of water. It's not uncommon for me to have 5 or 6 liters on me every time I leave the truck so that I make sure that I'm good and the dogs are taken care of. I also use a tracking collar. There's a lot of different varieties that are out there, but my dogs are kind of like my kids, so I want to know right where they're at and that they're safe anytime we're out there in the field. So beyond that, it kind of comes down to figuring out where to hunt. Our website, we try to make really user friendly to try to make it as easy and kind of common sense to navigate. So when you go to our website, which is wildlifedepartment.com, across the top, you'll see that ribbon of licensing, fishing, hunting. Oh, well, we're talking about hunting. That's probably the one we need to click on. If you click that hunting resources there that I've pointed out, you'll find information for deer hunting, elk hunting, turkey hunting, quail, and pheasant hunting. So here's that quail hunting page, and this is one of the places that this video that we're making will actually be shared once we've got it down and processed. You can also click on that where to hunt. Where to hunt is going to bring up a couple of different options to show you the different types of public lands that are out there and available to you. On the left-hand side of the screen is our wildlife management areas, and on the right-hand side is our Oklahoma Land Access Program properties. As you're going through these, there's a lot of information you can get kind of online scouting from what the topography of these WMAs looks like, what the overall plant community looks like, and even some insights on what kind of critters are out there. On our OLAP properties, for instance, it won't let me move it. It'll pop up this box here on the side that will actually show you information like what the ground cover is. So I want to say this one said it was old wheat crop and tall grass prairie or native grasses. That's a pretty good indication that that's going to be a decent spot that might hold some birds. It'll also tell you some species that have been seen. And so for this one, it actually had said deer, turkey, dove, and quail. And that means that our Oklahoma Land Access Program biologists or technicians have actually observed these animals out on these areas. So some more of that kind of e-scouting tools that you can use. One thing I did want to throw out here is that with our new 2024 license package, hunters that are intending to use these OLAP properties will need to have the Oklahoma Land Access Permit. And I believe there's a different price on those between resident and non-resident. So it's a pretty good deal for the amount of acres that it opens up to you. I know I've got mine and we'll definitely be hitting some of these properties as the season goes on. So we've kind of narrowed it down to a few WMAs that we might want to go look at. We've got an idea of what some of the land cover looks like. How do we know where to go hunt on those WMAs? I like to picture a quail as a soda can, specifically a soda can with legs. And if we can imagine a soda can with legs trying to navigate the terrain, I don't think either of the photos there on the right make it any sense for that soda can with legs to be running around. The top photo is way too thick, and the bottom photo is way too sparsely vegetated. So that soda can with legs would either have a difficult time getting around or no cover. So we want to instead think about something that's more diverse. So here's a great photo from one of our wildlife management areas where we can see all those little green clumps are all shrub thickets. We have a very wide variety of native grasses and forbs that cover the landscape. We also have some different terrain. This is much more reasonable for that soda can with legs to try to navigate and get around it. So we've focused in on a WMA. We've focused in on a little bit of an area of that WMA, but we still are, how do we want to go at this hunting? So finding habitat is going to be the key. This is a screenshot from one of our wildlife management areas in Northwest Oklahoma. So how would we approach hunting here? I like to think of it kind of like an amoeba shape. I want to focus in, and you can see I've drawn it to kind of zigzag between some of the shrubs that are out there. If you can do that, oh, some of my slides didn't transfer. While you're walking that orange path, your dogs are essentially going to be zigzagging back and forth in front of you. So they're going to be covering a lot more ground than you are, and really increasing your odds of being able to find some birds. Now, you don't necessarily have to have the dogs. If you don't have a bird dog, you don't know somebody with a bird dog, you can still get out and walk around on these areas. And honestly, in a year like this, you'll probably encounter some birds. It's definitely going to be some good hunting out there this fall. And at the end of the day, you get to that opportunity where you're able to harvest a bird. So a couple things that I wanted to point out here before we wrap up is that upland hunting is a special kind of hunt. It's not about filling a freezer. It's more about getting out there, getting a field, and enjoying times with friends, with family, and with your four-legged companions. I'll often hear hunters that are frustrated about not finding more birds, but that's honestly part of the challenge. It's part of the legacy of the uplands. So I do recommend that you check out some of our NGO partners for mentor hunts or opportunities to get out in the field. We have very active folks with Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, as well as National Wild Turkey Federation that do a ton of different events to be able to help get folks out there into the uplands and experiencing the outdoors. With that, I want to say, get out there, work some ground, trust your dog, and make some memories. Enjoying the Oklahoma outdoors. On behalf of my technician there on the right, Carson, and my new assistant upland game technician, Goose, the outdoors are always open, and we look forward to seeing you out there. So with that, I'll say if there are any questions up to this point, we'll also have Jacob jump back in and touch back on some more of the regs.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. Super
Absolutely.
thorough. I always enjoy your presentations. And love seeing your doggies.
Yes, that's the best part.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, he did a really good job of covering regulations, but Jacob, if there's anything to fill in or any common questions that you have.
I don't have much. He pretty much covered everything. Good job, Tel.
Thanks.
I'll just talk on a few topics that we know you kind of have issues with. So one that we see a lot with quail and pheasant is bag limits. So you can't shoot your buddy's bag limit. So if Tail's a really good shot and I'm a really bad shot, he can't invite me out and then shoot, all my birds too. And then we have a combined bag limit. So, with quail, 20 birds. Well, I need to shoot 10 of those. He needs to shoot 10 of those. We also need to keep those birds separate. So, if he's walking in the field, he has 15 birds and I have 5 together, we're under our actual limit of birds we can shoot total for the day. But possession limit is broken at that point in the field. So be cautious of that. These shotguns, this is a very social event. So we're going to be out there hunting with multiple people. So that orange is extremely important. Even if it's not a big game season, we recommend wearing that. And that's just, keep you safe. I also recommend wearing some sort of eyeglasses. I actually have one of the game wards that I work with actually got shot in the eye by a quail hunter from like over 100 yards away. And it was just one stray BB, a freak incident, but it went into his eye. So we want to avoid that. Make sure you know where your people are. Be respectful of other people while you're out there. If you're on public lands and there's several groups, try to keep your distance the best you can and just be respectful. We're all out there to have a good time. You cannot shoot these animals off the road. So if you're driving from one spot to the other, you can't throw your shotgun out the window because a big rooster pheasant runs by. That's frowned upon, and you'll get a pretty good talking to over that one. Um, Other than that, just be safe and have fun out there. There's not Tel covered it all. It's pretty simple. License wise, make sure that you have your licenses. If you're under 18, you don't have to have a license even, which is really cool. One option that Tell didn't talk about, and it's not super common. I just have one in my area. We do have these things called commercial hunt areas. And Lincoln County, we have a few quail around, not necessarily a huntable population. But we do have commercial hunt areas that are licensed through the department. We do inspections on them every year, and it's usually like a released bird type of thing where they're actually releasing birds out there. They use it a lot for dog training, getting prepared for the season. And in some of those places, you can actually pay to go out there and hunt, work your dogs, somewhere a little closer for home if you can't drive up to Western Oklahoma or somewhere where the population's higher. So that's a lot of fun. It's definitely an option. You can find all that stuff on our website. Other than that, I don't really have anything else. If you guys haven't ever got the crap scared out of you by a covey jumping up, you're missing out. So you need
It'll
to get on
definitely
that.
wake you up. Hey, we had a really
Yes.
good question come in the chat for you. What would you advise someone to do if they accidentally harvested a hen pheasant?
The best thing to do is just call your warden. So I recommend, you can Google Oklahoma game wardens will pop up. The front page or the second page of the reg books has our numbers in it too. Save our number in there wherever you're going to be hunting out, just in case something happens. You can report those crimes. We're here to help you out. If somebody accidentally shoots a hen pheasant, if they call me, I don't like. I understand accidents happen. Those birds are getting up fast. Stuff happens. It just happens. If you call me and tell me, I will be way more lenient than if I see you do it or I get a report of you doing it. Because if you shoot one and you hide it, well, then I know that you broke the law and you're trying to get away with it. But if you make an accident, you call me, no problem. And that goes for anything. A lot of times, I've seen a lot of meadowlarks meet their demise by quail hunters. Meadowlark's another bird sits in the grass. They'll jump up kind of like a quail. If you shoot an accidental bird, just let your local warden know. It's not a big deal. Obviously, if you're calling us and telling us about it, you're not a hardened criminal like we're after. So we'll work with you on it, and it'll be a lot better.
And I would add on to that, going back to those hunter education principles of identifying your target before you pull that trigger will go a really long way in keeping you 100% legal. We definitely want folks to have fun in the uplands and be safe and be legal. A couple of other questions that have come in on the chat. Is there a covey size that you should not shoot at? That's a lot like, is there a deer size? Is there a buck size you shouldn't shoot at? Obviously, I'm not a person that likes to go after singles. So a lot of times we'll have the covey rise of a lot of birds coming up. And then you'll have an opportunity that you could go after individual birds if you wanted to keep working those. I don't really like to go after them. I like the covey rise and I move on to try to find another covey. There's not really a hard and fast rule on that as far as what's recommended. A lot of
Ethical.
or ethical. It comes down to kind of what your fundamentals are, what your beliefs are as far as what a good size covey is to go after and try to harvest. Can you shoot pheasant on the ground? So there's not a rule on pot shooting a pheasant. Uplands are generally rooted in the sporting nature of it, and so I would argue that's not very sporting. I don't know that there would be any laws in Oklahoma to prevent it, but again, it's one of those of it's not very sporting to just go after a bird that's sitting on the ground.
Yeah, and just some real life experience with that. I've seen it before where you've wounded a pheasant and those pheasants hit the ground. They can't fly, but they're still running. By all means, yeah, absolutely put those pheasants down. We
For
don't
sure,
want to
yes.
leave a wounded one out there. So don't feel like it's frowned upon to shoot one that's been injured. And then also just to kind of clarify on the pot shooting a quail. So it doesn't have to be a covey of quail altogether. Even a single quail on the ground, if you shoot it, is considered pot shooting. So just think about that as well.
Yeah. So should we avoid tracking down every single with the dogs? I definitely think you should. I think it's not very sporting to go after every single. What kind of management practices will help get more quail on private land? That's actually a really good question, and we have a whole bunch of information on our website about that under our landowner programs. So we have actually biologists around the state that can come out and visit you on your property to try to help improve habitat conditions on your property. We also have a quail enhancement program where in instances where I'm able to go out and meet with folks on their private properties and help them come up with a management plan to improve that habitat for the birds. But ultimately driving towards native grasses, native forbs, and as much diversity as we can get. Obviously, getting rid of things like eastern red cedars will go a heck of a long way for better management on our wildlife. The last question just came in. I don't know that we want to go too far off in the weeds on it. What are the regulations if someone were to shoot your dog? So I would boil it down, and Jacob, you're welcome to take that one and run with it. But shooting a dog in general in Oklahoma is not legal. So, period. If you're in a situation where one of your dogs gets injured by someone and it was a malicious intent, you need to be reaching out not only to your local game warden, but your county sheriff's office as well to get that situation handled as quickly and promptly as possible.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. So it definitely varies by county. In my county, we have a lot of issues with basically feral dogs. Like people have dogs, they don't feed them, they run loose. It's a huge issue and it's very devastating to wildlife. Now, obviously, that is very different than a trained hunting dog. But in my county, our DA's office and stuff has basically said you have the right to defend your property. So if there is a dog running on your place, be it a quail dog or any sort of dog, they are legally protected to defend their property. So if they're in fear of their livestock themselves, they can shoot that dog. Now that's going to be a case by case basis. I mean, obviously, I hope that your quail dog's not going to attack somebody or eat their chickens on their property. But depending on your judicial system and your judges in that county, the outcome can go either way. It is the landowner's responsibility to keep their dog on the property they have permission to. So, do your best to keep them on the property that you are allowed to hunt, and hopefully you don't have any issues. But if it's a malicious attack, like you're out on public land, somebody gets mad at you and shoots your dogs, by all means, yeah, that is 100% illegal.
Yeah, and on the public land side, that can even go into hunter harassment, hunter intimidation. There's a lot of different directions that can go there. Yeah, we could probably sit on that question for a couple hours. So
But there's a lot of roads that question can go down for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think we've had a very productive morning on getting folks ready and geared up. So I'll throw out a couple of things on that quail resources page. You'll find both the August roadside survey data as well as the October data. Both those reports are up on our website. One last thing I would throw out is on some of our wildlife management areas, you'll actually see quail wing envelopes. So we asked that hunters across some of our WMAs and information on which ones of these WMAs is all on our website. But that'll actually allow you as a hunter to remove one of the wings from your quail, put it in the envelope, and then I'm able to collect all those at the end of the year and can get a lot of really good data. So for instance, if a bird is less than 150 days old, I can tell you pretty much when it was hatched. And that really helps us track the weather patterns and seeing how our hatch affected on that WMA, whether it was a really early hatch or a really late hatch or what the conditions were on the ground. And all of that helps us as the ODWC better forecast and better share information for folks that are excited to get out and chase these critters come fall. So we definitely look forward to seeing you all out there.
Yeah. So we do have a little bit more time. If you guys have any more questions, we have, 14 more minutes to 1 o'clock. So I don't want to cut anybody off early. But if you guys, like I said, if we want to watch this again, it'll be recorded. And what I like to do after this is I send out a follow-up email to everybody that was signed up, including the ones that didn't make it today, with the link of the recording and a survey link. And this survey is a quick survey. It just helps us to kind of gauge and let us know how we're doing with these classes and all of our ODWC programs. We really, really appreciate y'all's feedback. There's a spot to suggest other classes that we could teach on. The sky's the limit on these. It has to be wildlife-ish related, but we could probably do it. So if you guys want to see something, want to learn about something specific, please type it in there. name number of who to call about land management for quail. Yes, so that's going to be, it'll be private land biologist in your area, right?
So my information was up just a little bit ago, my
Yes.
email, and that will get you to it. It's pretty easy. tell.judkins@odwc.ok.gov. If I'm not able to come out and meet with folks, then I get with our private lands biologist and get them out. But all of that information is on our website, wildlifedepartment.com. You can click on who we are, and there are landowner programs in that list, and it'll have everybody's cell phone numbers right there.
And I will go ahead and just put Tell's email in, or email address in the follow-up email that I send you guys, just so you don't have to try to come back and look at it.
So we had a question come in about what habitat to look for quail hunting in the Broken Bow timber area. So we actually have the southeastern Oklahoma is probably one of our most stable quail populations in the state. It's a low population and it's a much different hunt than we're used to. But a lot of our WMAs down there are based around timber harvest. Those are the general land practices that are going on. If you were to go down there and work those logging roads, specifically in some of the mid-year timber cuts, or along the edges where there's been a recent clear cut versus an old growth, you will definitely find some birds down there. The hard part on hunting that timber country is dogs that are trained to go and work the big country of the grasslands in the Northwest aren't cut out for the same type of use in southeastern Oklahoma. So you're going to want a much closer working dog to be able to have the opportunity to get on those birds. And even when you do find them, it's a split second before that bird disappears in the timber. It's a very fun, but it can be a very frustrating hunt to go down to the southeast and go after quail.
Yeah, I'll add to that too, just kind of a simple thing to keep in mind. Look for areas where sunlight is hitting the ground. If it's a big shaded tree and there's no light on the ground, probably not going to be any quail. But along those edges and stuff where there's lots of forbs and native grass, growing amongst those trees, that's where I would start looking.
Absolutely. I had some more questions on falconry in Oklahoma. There's a lot of good information on our website about our falconry program and what permits are needed. I would definitely check into that. As far as kind of your initial steps are to get with a master falconer is about the only way to get into a falconry program. And then that from there is an inspection with your local game warden. So I would first reach out to a master falconer and then kind of go from there.
And there's a big test that you have to take
Yeah.
too. It's pretty in-depth and in
Yeah,
detail process.
it is very highly regulated. The guys that do it are fantastic people. They devote a lot of time and energy to it. It's not something that you just get a wild hair and say, "Hey, I'm going to go get a puppy."
Yeah,
It is a commitment to take care of a predatory bird. So
for sure. Awesome questions. I've enjoyed this having a good number of folks in here and some good questions.
Good deal. You're welcome.
Good stuff.
Well,
Going once.
yeah. If you have any more questions, if you think of them, always just email me. I will field them to Tell, or I will supply you with the email address, and you can just bug him directly. So, and it's not bugging at all.
Feel free to reach out, and we're pretty fortunate here in Oklahoma that we have a wildlife department that is very passionate about quail and upland birds and improving things for them, their habitat, and the hunters that go after them. And so definitely take advantage of that and reach out. We can get you some information on improving your backyard for quail, improving your habitat, and ultimately just seeing more birds across the landscape is the goal that everybody would like to see.
We have tons, any volunteer opportunities for wildlife conservation. I was literally about to just say, we have a great Quail and Pheasant Forever active conservation organization here in Oklahoma. It is Quail and Pheasant Forever, and there's local chapters around. And if you're interested in specifically upland bird, that is the place to start. There's many opportunities. They do WMA cleanups. They do all sorts of stuff that would be, conservation minded as far as upland game goes.
Yep. So what size steel shot should you use for pheasant? I guess that is something I could have talked about. I'll definitely get that added in for next year. Generally speaking, on the quail side, I'm a number 6, number 7 size shot. I think is a pretty good size. When it comes to pheasant, I'll typically go up to about a number 4 is about the biggest that I'll use. And I prefer to use steel shot, especially when I'm out pheasant hunting, because there's also the duck seasons are open. So if I'm using steel shot, I'm able to also take an opportunity to harvest waterfowl that may be in open seasons as well. Thanks for the program. Think I would, yes, I'd see. There we go. Steve's already throwing me the English setters would be great to go with my GSPs. 2 GSPs is plenty to have as they're at the house. They definitely keep us entertained. But you know, each style of bird dog has a little bit different way of working, and you never know what you're gonna get. I'll put it that way. But again, the bird dogs that find you birds are the best bird dogs.
And just to further elaborate on the volunteer opportunities, and there is options, just not, I mean, with NWTF, National Wild Turkey Federation, there's lots of conservation organizations here in Oklahoma that allow you to volunteer. So if you're just thinking about it in general, there's tons of avenues for you to go down between Ducks Unlimited, Delta Waterfowl, Quail, Pheasant Forever. We have Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. We have Oklahoma Hunters and Anglers. OHA, and a few different options for you there. So any sort of niche you want to go in, there's a place there for you. So I definitely encourage everybody to sign up and to be part of a nonprofit or conservation organization. That is the single most beneficial way you can be effective for conservation, is signing up for these things.
And you're putting yourself in a position where the people around you are all super passionate about the same thing. And that can oftentimes give you friends that have bird dogs if you don't have any, or give you an opportunity to take other people hunting or experience other parts of the state. So definitely take those opportunities as they come.
Yep. All right. Do we have anything else to add? Jacob, any final words? All right. Well,
I think I'm good.
Okay, well, good deal. Well, you'd be looking for an email from me. It takes a while for me to upload this to YouTube because it's like an hour long. So give me a little bit of time. It might be tomorrow morning, but I will get you the email with the recording as well as Tell's information. And I might try to find some links that we were talking about with those governments or the state habitat programs and stuff. So I will try to throw as much information as we did cover and link it to the website to be as helpful as possible. So all right. Well, we appreciate your time and thank you. And we will see you next class is next week or 2 weeks from now. I think it might be November 20th for deer rifle. So we will see you guys there, hopefully. Happy hunting. Thank you.
Look forward to seeing y'all out there.